Hey, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So my name is Nessa. I go by Nasufu on my social media, and I was thinking recently with the vlogs that I've been uploading, because I'm finally back in my vlog bag. I have about 10 years worth of vlogs, and as you can see from the channel, there's barely any that have been edited and posted. As I'm finally getting back into vlogs, I said to myself, why would anyone be interested in the vlogs and what I'm doing when I travel, or what I'm doing when I go back home to the UK, or even my day-to-day life where I live now, if they don't know me? Like, I feel like people watch vlogs based off of their interest they have in people or relatability and stuff like that. I've wanted to be on YouTube probably since I was about 17 or 18. I haven't actually recorded many sit-down videos. This is a medium that I love personally. I watch YouTube like it's TV, and I've always just wanted to be a part of the platform in any way. And I just feel like now, as I'm in a stage in my life where I'm really being the most authentic version of me, being open about my experiences, sharing, and I hope that what I will share on this channel will connect with even just a few people and inspire people to just live authentically and hear all the shit that I've gone through and that I've been doing, and the mistakes I've made, and the great outcomes and the failures and the successes and all of the shit that goes on in life in general. I feel like we always learn about people's struggle at the end of the struggle, because, you know, on social media nobody wants to see people crying, as people say. Nobody's really tuned in when shit is going on in the moment, so a lot of us don't post what's going on in our life at the moment, but then we post after the success. Oh, this is what I went through, this is where I am now. And yeah, now I am in a good place. Now I am in a place where I am the most stable I've ever been financially and mentally. I feel like I'm the most in touch with myself I've ever been. Every year I feel like in the last few years I have been that, wow, the moon looks beautiful. Has been more unraveling of myself in terms of learning more about myself, learning more about who I am. I feel like the more and more that I learn about who I am, the more comfortable I am with myself, and the more openly I can talk about my flaws. And as well, I like to yap. So being on YouTube is great because the short form content, we're yapping, doesn't work. People have short attention spans, but I feel like the people who like YouTube and have longer attention spans are on YouTube. Anyway, I thought that I would do like an intro video. I didn't want to do like a basic, oh, this is about me, this is my life, blah, blah, blah. But I thought I would give like 10, 11 facts about me, but based off of questions. I had asked on my Instagram story, like, what are some questions that you have, or what are some things that you've always been curious about me? I love my Instagram because on my stories, people are super engaged. The feed, the engagement, the algorithm just be pissing me off, honestly. But my stories, I feel like my stories crew, like, we're locked in. If you see me looking down, it's because I have my phone and I have the questions written out on here. Let's get straight up, knocked the camera. Like, let's just get straight to it. So, first one that came up, how did I get into travel content? So I started traveling first when I was 18. I never left the country up until that point with my family, and we didn't have any money. We were too poor to travel. I was always jealous of my friends that traveled. I always just dreamt of traveling the world. I used to have this atlas. If I can find a picture of it, I'll put it on the screen. In the atlas was just all the facts about the world, all the different languages that people speak in different countries, just different fun facts about cultures and geography and just everything. And it was just amazing. My dad had got me it from a charity shop, and I loved it so much. And I just always dreamed of going to places. Whilst I was finishing up like my high school work, my exams and everything like that, I was also working, and I was saving to go on my first trip. Even though my first time traveling happened when I was 18, 19, I didn't actually start saying I want to post on social media in an intentional way until 2016. I had been traveling a lot between 2013 and 2016, so those 3 years is when I got introduced to travel, got the travel bug, as people call it. But 2016 was when I said I want to post. A lot of the inspiration came from people constantly telling me, like friends and family, or people I would meet whilst I was traveling, like saying, wow, you should post, it's so inspiring that you've just been to so many places and you've only started traveling in the past couple of years. And I think predominantly being a solo traveler in the past, noticing that there were not a lot of black people when I traveled, particularly black women. And I have always felt like representation is an important thing that can influence us. I just knew that if more people saw that people were out here doing it, they'd be more influenced to go. Remember the first trip that I said I'm gonna post content, like actually be intentional. I wanna say it was when I went to Malta with my ex, so that wasn't a solo trip, funnily enough, but I really took content, like I really thought about it. I've always loved photo composition. I feel like that's the way I am creative. Composition of photos, thinking about the outfit, thinking about the environment, thinking about the poses, the lighting, all of that. I just love all of that. I guess it's a kind of it's like a subgroup of photography. I had posted some other things from previous trips on my social media, from Bali, from Brazil, other solo trips, but I hadn't really posted them in the way that was intentional about I want to inspire people, which now is called influencing. So question number 2, where did I grow up? I feel like this is a really good question because I'm always, whenever I post on my social media that I'm going home or wherever, I just tell people I'm going home. I always say London, and you see me in London. The past 4 or 5 years, whenever I go home, I will say London, but I wasn't actually raised in London. So I was born in London, and before I moved to the US, I was living in London. My sister lives in London. When I go home, I literally stay in London. I grew up in a county next to London, so it's super, super close by. Sometimes they get just, so there's parts of the county I grew up in, Essex, that is seen as a part of London, and there's parts of London that is seen as Essex. So within Essex, I grew up in a small, tiny little town called Canvey Island. Not a lot of people would have heard of it. It's a very small, predominantly white town where there's like a couple of buses an hour. It's got a very old population. Me and my siblings were the only black children on the island at one point. It's a lot more multicultural now, but there was one point where, yeah, it was rough. The racism, hey. Story for another day. So yeah, I didn't actually grow up in London, but London is the place that I feel most familiar with in the UK. I don't spend much time in Essex anymore, and I honestly, even when I was growing up in Essex, there was a point through my teenage years where I would go to London so much that I feel like so much of who I am and what I enjoy about the UK is influenced by London. Like, I love big cities. I navigate big cities really well. It's why I prefer living in big cities when I move to different places around the world, because of London. I'm an Essex girl and my accent is interesting. I actually didn't sound like this growing up, and a lot of people have pointed that out. The accent I have now is an outcome of traveling so much and people telling me that they didn't understand me. So people whose second language is English telling me like, I can't understand you. I had a very Essex girl, East London Cockney accent, because of the people that raised me. Very aware I have an Essex accent. There was a time in life where I hated the fact that I had an Essex accent, because you know how black people are. Everybody wants everyone to be a monolith. So if you have an Essex accent, it's like you're less black, when it's like, that doesn't even make sense. Now I feel like my accent is quite, it's obviously Essex, it's still UK, it's still Cockney-ish. It is less than it used to be. How I used to talk before, when I go and when I'm with my people who are from Essex, that's when I really get back into that accent. But my everyday talking is literally just like this. But you know, we throw in a, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? I'm not being funny. That's me for real, for real. Question number 3. How many businesses have you owned? This is a good question too, because a lot of people don't know how many businesses I've owned. I've posted about a lot of businesses, obviously it's for people to support them and to use them, but I have had more businesses. So I'll do a quick timeline because I actually think this is a really good video idea. So I had my first ever business in 2020 during the pandemic. I was living in Colombia in 2019 to 2020. I moved back home to the UK because of the pandemic, had to leave, didn't want to be in a lockdown in another country. So I moved home with my mom and my sister. It's crazy, I feel like the pandemic had so many negative outcomes and influences, but also really good positive ones, being that it was my first experience of entrepreneurship. I lost my job because of the pandemic, like a lot of people, had no income, had a lot of time on my hands, so I got into drop shipping. My first ever business was a drop shipping business that sold jewelry, and it was really successful. So successful that it meant that I could then fund my travels throughout the pandemic. Yes, I was one of those terrible people that was traveling during the pandemic. I found a loophole for certain countries that were still open, that still wanted tourism. And I went, and yeah, those who know, it's actually really only my close circle of friends who know about that business. And when I was posting it on my social media, I never said it was mine. I actually just would say it was my friends. And you know, I was new to business at that time. I didn't feel confident telling people that I'd started a business. My second business was my business Sun Hunt, which I still have and I still love, and I am working on relaunching that. The past few years, I felt like I didn't have the capacity for it because I was doing my master's degree, because I launched another business, which I'll talk about next, and because life was life nothing, and I want to really pour into that business, as that is the one that I think I do feel most passionate about. Sunhan is a swimwear brand that I started also in the pandemic, the year after in 2021, and it was also just incredibly successful, and was really proud of it, and I know that I'm going to take it to the next level. My third business that I had was Nasufu Travels, which most people, I feel like, on my social media know about. That is my business where I hosted group trips. I took groups of ladies to different countries around the world. So if they wanted to travel when they didn't have anyone to go with, all they had to do was sign up to the trip, pay whatever the trip costs, and I will cover everything: accommodation, meals, where we're going to eat, activities, transportation, itinerary. I hosted everything, top to bottom. Can be quite a stressful business, but it's also incredibly rewarding. There were lots of hiccups and errors and shit along the way that I wish I did differently, shit that I'm super proud of. But it's a business that I'm incredibly proud of because people developed friendships from that business that lasted after the trips. Any people who attended my trips would message me saying, Nessa, I'm going away with so-and-so, and I met her on your trip, and I'm just so glad I met this group of women. And one of the main things I wanted to do with Nasufu Travels was to not only to bring experiences to women, particularly Black women, but to also create friendships and bond and bring together like-minded women. So I'm super proud of that business. That business also caused a lot of my demise in 2023 and 2024, but especially 2023, which we'll get into. And yeah, but that was the other business. And also in the Sufu Travels, it wasn't just group trips, it was also me planning people's itineraries. I don't advertise the itinerary planning anymore. If someone did want me to plan a trip for them, I would be open to it. It's just not something that I care to advertise anymore. But I did actually quite a lot of those. I got a lot of requests to plan trips for people, and it's something that I find easy to do, and I know that I'm good at it. The group trips do not exist anymore. I announced the end of the group trips in 2023, but I finished hosting the last group trip in 2024, which was Morocco in September 2024. I never posted about it because I was on my social media hiatus break at that time, but it was a beautiful final trip. My fourth business that I've had as well is another dropshipping company that I had, which not many people know about at all, not even my friends, just because it was a trial. It wasn't as successful as this first dropshipping business that I had. I gave it a go. It was during a time where I was low income, and then eventually I didn't have a job because I had to quit one of my jobs for particular reasons, mainly because of my master's degree, and honestly it wasn't as successful because I just didn't put as much energy into it as I did with the first one or with any of my other businesses, and so I just honestly dissolved it probably earlier than I should have. I know that it takes time for businesses to get off the ground and to get some motion, and you have to put a lot of work into it, but I think my head just wasn't in it, and that's why I've realized there's so many businesses that I am aware of, like business models and formats that I could do, and I know how to make successful, but if I'm not passionate about it, I don't want to do it. Most of the people who do drop shipping are not passionate about selling eye covers or selling socks or selling blankets or selling candle warmers, but they're passionate about money and they're passionate about making something work. I'm passionate about money too, but I have to really care about the business as well. So I think that's why the second drop shipping business didn't succeed, because I really just didn't put much energy into it. Next question. How was you raised? I don't know what that question means. How were you raised? I'm not trying to be the grammar police. How were you raised? First of all, very well, if that's the question. But I'm gonna just assume and deduce that this is about my upbringing in terms of like the fact I grew up in foster care. I'm gonna assume it's that because I've posted about that now and then, but not very much. But I do plan to post more about that this year, mainly because I feel like my mum was one of the most incredible human beings to walk the earth, and I really just want my mum to be known and celebrated, and I want the world to know about her. And so that means that I have to be a lot more open and vulnerable about my upbringing, which is fine. So a great way is to start now. I grew up in foster care. I went into foster care at 2 or 3 years old. It's crazy the fact that I can't even remember when I've been telling this story my whole life. I don't mind talking about the fact that I was in foster care. Like I said, I was born in London, grew up in London for a little bit, and then lived in Canvey Island in Essex, where my foster parents were. My foster parents were white, and obviously that did have an effect on me. Just all of the identity shifts. I never identified as white, like I'm not transracial. I identify as a white woman. No, but obviously like that can affect your identity as a black person, and also just call into question a lot of things. And obviously I'm Nigerian as well, and I'm very proudly Nigerian, but I was not raised with Nigerian parents. I feel like I'm really blessed that a lot of the Nigerian culture that I know and hold true is I gained through my friends, my close friends who are Nigerian, and also now having somewhat of a relationship with my biological family, and yeah, just learning more about my culture. I've been to Nigeria many times. There is this like meshing of having this very British upbringing, but also being aware that your parents aren't your parents, but also being Nigerian. I think that's maybe also lends to why I just am a child of the world. I always say that the world is my home. And also a quick note, whenever I say foster, people always say in the next sentence adoption, and I'm like, well, I didn't say that. I didn't say adopted, I said foster. Foster care is very different. Adoption is when you legally take parental responsibility for a child. So that's why the children get the new parents' last name. You will not see your biological parents until you choose to as an adult. Whereas in foster care, I had a social worker growing up. I was always aware of my biological parents' existence. Throughout different periods in my life, I saw them. Like I actually spent time with them. Sometimes I'd sleep over at one of their houses. And lots of different dynamics that have fucked me up and made me the crazy, wonderful person that I am today. Trauma! Okay, so yeah, more on that in another video. Hobby people don't know I have so many hobbies and so many interests. What's a good one though, because I don't want this video to be super long. God, I have so many hobbies. There's so many things I'm interested in, but I'd say one of my hobbies that I feel like not a lot of people know about me is that I'm really fashion obsessed. You know, I may not always dress like it, but I have been studying fashion magazines, fashion houses, like high fashion houses, editorial fashion, and how it intersects with makeup and hair, photography since I was about 7-8 years old. Like I actually like love it. I've always been interested in it. We all know that red carpets are a really great way for us to see what's going on in the fashion world and to critique, and one of my favorite YouTube channels is called Haute la Mode or Haute la Mode. I'm maybe saying it wrong, one because it's French, but two because maybe I can't remember the full name of the channel, but I am subscribed. Luke is amazing. I love his videos, and I used to have a blog when I was 16 called The Politics of Fashion because I'm interested in politics, always have been. I work in policy, so kind of like adjacent to politics. It is politics, but not for the government. I just love looking at runway shows. I love learning about how the collections were made. I love discovering up and coming brands. Most of my life, I haven't been able to afford any of it. Even though now I make a little more coin, I don't, you know, particularly dabble in all of these like brands that are like really expensive. But I just love creativity, and I think that fashion is art. It's one of my hobbies that I spend a lot of time looking into, getting excited about, and it always inspired me to want to be a fashion designer, where now I probably don't want to be a fashion designer, but a swimwear designer, yes. Number 5, what's a personal challenge that you've overcome? I feel like I've been kind of breadcrumbing a little bit in this video about my mum. My mum passed away in 2021, January 4th, 2021. Something that I, again, have spoken about lightly on my social media, but not much. And I do feel like we don't speak about grief properly in society. I feel like the reason that people don't know how to support you and people don't know what to say or how to be there for you, or sometimes say the wrong things, like the most ridiculous, annoying, irritating things, is because we just aren't taught how to deal with grief in society, and sometimes you feel like your grief is a burden. I have been really trying to make sure that I'm more open with my grief with my loved ones, like friends, and my sister, but also just in public, because I'm somebody who doesn't mind sharing publicly, but I still struggle with that. Another reason I feel like I want to share more on here, hopefully connect with people who feel that way as well, and if you haven't experienced grief, to maybe just shed some light maybe educate in a way that you can be there for people that you love who have experienced grief. Losing my mom was the single most worst experience of my life. So when I say traveling was the single most positive, impactful thing in my life, a thing that I gave to myself, losing my mother was the single most worst experience of my life. It has changed my life in so many ways. So much of my life, the last 4 to 5 years, is an outcome of my grief of losing my mum. Like literally my decisions, my mindset, my thought process, my mistakes, my successes, so much. My weight gain, like grief completely changes your life. Like it flips it over. So yeah, that's a personal challenge that I wouldn't say I've overcome. I'm overcoming, and you never heal from grief. If anyone ever says that you're gonna get over it or it will pass, it won't. It just won't. But there's ways that you learn to deal with it. And thank God for therapy and time. But it's something that you will experience for the rest of your life, and you will just have waves. Like the wave will come, the wave will go. I think it has been really insightful for me because I feel like now whenever someone loses someone, I feel like I know how to be supportive for them. And you know, previous to that, yeah, and my dad, my foster dad, whenever I refer to parents, I'm referring to my foster parents, but they raised me. So I usually will say parents, meaning foster parents, and I would say biological mum, biological dad when I'm referring to my biological dad, biological mum. And I also lost my dad a few years before my mum died as well, which hit me hard, but admittedly probably didn't hit me as hard. Just because of the impact my mum had on my life. Let's move along because, you know, this is an emotional topic and this is meant to be a fun video. Number 6, embarrassing travel moment. Oh, listen, I have so many. I don't actually know where to start, and I don't know if anyone else is like this. I feel like I forget a lot of the things that I do because my life is just so fucking crazy and full. This might take me a second to just rack my brain. I might have to cut the cameras. One that comes to mind that's not too long, I was in Thailand, 2024 in July, hosting a group trip. It was a great group trip, but it was a type of trip where there were so many things happening outside of my control, such as the weather. There was one day where we went to the PP Islands and it was just disaster after disaster with the waves, with the driver, with 2 of our phones breaking because of the water. Not because we dropped it in water, but because splashback from the water from the boat was so bad and it got through our phones, and somebody nearly slipped off the side of the ramp into the water and could have bust their head, and it was just so much. But the girls on that trip were amazing, by the way. Like the fact that a lot of them still booked trips with me after that is a testament to how I guess I handled the situation. And you know, I'm a human. I'm gonna be stressed and show if something is upsetting me or hard, but I'm also gonna remember that I have a responsibility to host and lead this group. So I'm gonna get my shit together and I'm gonna make this shit work, which I always try to do. And so we did, and we still had a great time, and I hold that trip so dear to my heart because I was going through a lot personally during that trip. As we are coming back from another day, it's pouring of rain. And I am trying to find out where the driver is, and I'm telling the girls to stay under the shelter to stay covered. I'm gonna go find the driver. Couldn't find the driver. My internet wasn't connecting because of where we were. We were on some island. It wasn't PP Islands, it was another day. I can't remember the name of those islands. So anyway, when I say it's shitting down with rain and cats and dogs. Like where you can't see, like it was giving monsoon type of rain. I was wearing a wig. And I had just taken out braids because I have this thing when I travel where, like, if I don't like my hair, because I know how to do my own hair, I will take my hair out. Like, I just will. And so I put on a wig, and that wig was a great wig. Like, I could lay the lace and stuff. But that day, I had just pinned it at the side. I don't know why. I don't know why. I didn't lay it. I wasn't wearing a headscarf. My God, I am running from the van that finally pulls up, because I don't know where the fuck he was, to the girls. As I'm running, there's a bunch of Chinese tourists, and I'm saying they're Chinese because I just remember hearing them speak like Mandarin, and I remember them being just everywhere because they're also waiting for like their tour buses to pick them up and stuff like that. I slip in these shoes on like the hard floor because the rain was like flooding the place. I slip, which is fine, you know, busting my ass. But when I slip, my wig that is not secured falls back off of my head. And never in my life did I think I would tell this story, but hey, we're being real, we're being authentic. I never thought I would tell this story. Because it's just fucking crazy. Like, I always would say to people when I hear like wig stories, I'm like, how is it not secured? My wig's always secured. Like, If you were to pull this wig right now that I'm wearing, don't be fooled because I'm wearing a headband. I'm wearing a headband because I'm going for like the preppy look. This shit is lame. You couldn't just pull this off without yank. But that wig, whew, just went back. I'm on my back, the wig's on my back. The people are Chinese tourists are trying to help me up. One of them picks up the wig and I'm like snatching the wig off of them. And there's this thing with me, when I go through like shitty or disastrous moments, I just get this moment of calm after initially panicking. Well, I'm just like, fuck it, man. I snatched the wig and I'm about to run and I'm like, you're about to run in the rain when you just slipped as you were running? I literally just grabbed the wig, put it in my bag and walked along with my wig cap, because at least I was wearing a wig cap. But as I was walking, I just pulled the wig cap off and had my little 2 dookie braids and kept it pushing. Like, that was a fucking mess. That was a fucking disaster. If you could live in one country for a year, where would it be? Brazil. Brazil. It was my first ever solo trip and it was the best trip I've ever taken, and it influenced so much of my travel after that. If I never went to Brazil, I don't think that I would have continued being a solo traveler. I don't think that I would have the appreciation for travel, and I could tell the story time as why Brazil is so important to me. But it's Brazil. I would love to live in Brazil. Like, I would love to. I don't know how or if I ever will, but I just love that country. I went there over 11 years ago this June, and it still has that impact on me. Brazil, that's it. That's a quick, easy answer. Craziest thing I've done when traveling. Lord, listen, I know my mom's not alive, God rest her soul, but she's listening, and I've done some shit when she was still alive. I've really done some shit. I'm a really, really crazy, spontaneous, adventurous YOLO traveler. And most of that happens when I'm by myself. Okay, so one that comes to mind was Brazil, because I feel like we're just on the topic of Brazil. When I got to Brazil, I decided to volunteer in a favela. And one night I was out in the favela. I was high as hell. And my tolerance to weed when I was like 19, 20, 21 was so bad. My tolerance now is really bad, by the way. Like, it's 2-3 puffs. And I live in DC where weed is legalized or decriminalized, one of them, but you can get them from dispensaries. I was still in Texas, where I used to live in Houston. I don't know if I would still talk about this as openly, but I'm in DC now. Anyway, so I was really high, walking through a favela. Can you imagine being high, hallucinating? Like, there might have been something else in the weed. I know. I would never take drugs from somebody now. It was my first ever solo trip. I was wilding. Anyway, I was just walking around a favela, high off my head, having hallucinations. I couldn't even tell what was real and what wasn't. Having the time of my life. Stopping into bars, saying hello to random people, and then being like, is this really happening? Like, not knowing what the hell's going on, but also just laughing my ass off, talking with people when I couldn't speak a lick of Portuguese. There's so many stories from these trips that one is tame, but that's probably quite crazy because it's just like ridiculous to even be high walking around, not just a favela, but anywhere that you're not familiar with. You don't speak the language. Didn't have a phone connected because those were the days where when you travel to somewhere that you weren't sure that you didn't want to like lose your stuff, you wouldn't take your phone out with you. So I had no phone on me as well. 9. This question is written with typos. 1 second, let me decipher. What's a childhood dream that you've always had? So I'm achieving my childhood dream of seeing the world. I'm really proud of myself. I never thought that I would have gone to as many countries as I've gone to. I don't travel to tick off a list of numbers, to tick off like a numbered list. I travel because I want to go to wherever I go to. But everywhere is on the list. But incredibly grateful. And a lot of that was on my own dime. And a lot of the times I went on those trips when I shouldn't have because I was broke and being irresponsible. But alas, we live and we learn. I would say another childhood dream is I really wanted to be an actor when I was growing up. Actor, actress, whatever. Found my love for acting when I was in primary school, which is elementary school. I always remember I played King Harold in the nativity play in my year 5 or year 6. I don't know what grade that is in America. I will Google it and put it on the screen. And I absolutely loved it. And I went into secondary school. I signed up for drama class in GCSE. I just loved drama. I loved acting. The battery died, so I don't know if the angle is the same because I had to put in the other battery. But I was so close to the end. But I was saying that I really wanted to be an actor, actress growing up, and would always just act out different scenes from favorite films when I was a child, and always believed that I would be one. I just never really took seriously enough to go to acting classes and to, you know, just continuously pursue it. The final question number 10. Was it 11? I think it's 11. Where do you live at the moment? Oh, so right now I live in Washington, D.C. in the United States. 3.5-hour drive from New York, or 2.5 hours on the train. Classed as the Northeast, but some people call it the Southeast. Because of the Mason-Dixie line, or the Dixon-Macy line, whatever the hell it's called. There's a line that is historically in the US that separated the North and the South. Some people see DC as the South. I lived in Texas, so I'm like, this ain't the South. I've been in DC now since April 2024. So I've been living in DC for 10 months. I love DC. I absolutely love it here. It's like a mini New York or a mini London. Its population is like 700,000 or 600,000. So it's nowhere near as big as London and New York, which have over 8 million people. Get a real city vibe from DC. I used to live in Houston, Texas for 3 years. I was doing my master's degree in Houston. I got a scholarship to go study there, but I did still have to pay for my tuition. The scholarship covered a large chunk, but when you're an international student, you still have to pay a lot. So covering a chunk, but not all of it, it left me broke. It's crazy to think that I've been living in the US for 4 years in July. 4 years. That's the longest I have lived in any of the other 5 countries that I've lived in outside of the UK. It's also kind of crazy that I even live here. If you just know me, or you knew the type of person I was politically before living here, and now that I live here and I work in policy in the US as well, is insane. I guess also as a 10B or 10A, it was not a question, but listing all the countries that I've lived in, obviously the UK, born and raised, Nigerian ethnicity and heritage. My tribe is Yoruba. I have lived in the Netherlands. I've lived in, which is Holland. I've lived in Spain. I've lived in Colombia. I've lived in the US. And I've always said that I lived in Brazil, but I was only there a few months. But I guess a few months can be classed as living. So if you class that as living, I've lived in Brazil. If you don't, then yeah, 5 or 6. That's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting. If you wanted to learn more about me, you did. If you're new to the channel, subscribe if you found it interesting. If you didn't, that's okay. That's okay. Comment anything else you'd like to see from me. On the note of businesses, I do have other endeavors coming up this year that kind of mix a lot of my passions. And I'm just really excited to live more boldly and more authentically, to share my struggles and how I got through them, and also what's coming next for me. There's a lot of things, oh, I just kicked the camera. There's a lot of things and a lot of changes that are coming for me in 2025 that I'm really excited about, but also nervous about. I haven't been nervous but excited in years, and I can't wait to share and just be on YouTube. I love YouTube. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.